questions tonight about an overnight police shooting. An officer in an unmarked car shoots and kills a man in Dallas. The bombs keep falling in Kosovo. Peace talks are off and now on again. Another U.S. embassy comes under attack, but police battle back. The changing face of marriage and divorce, where they're headed, may shock you. Plus, tonight's Lone Star Adventure. We're headed to skate camp. The news starts now.
Broadcasting live for Dallas and Fort Worth. This is the news station, Fox 4 News.
Our officer was following who he thought was a robbery suspect.
Questions tonight about a police shooting in Dallas. Good evening, everybody. A police officer opened fire last night during an undercover operation.
A robbery suspect allegedly pulled a gun on a plainclothes policeman. Fox 4's Lena Lewis is live in the newsroom with more on the story. Good evening, Lena.
Good evening, Richard. The shooting happened while the robbery suspect's wife and 2 children waited in a car. It began as Officer Jerry Hernandez was working undercover. He says he witnessed a man attempt to rob another and then drive off in a Ford Explorer. Officer Hernandez began following the suspect in his unmarked car.
Our officer was following who he thought was a robbery suspect, and the suspect vehicle stopped. When the car stopped suddenly in front of him, a man got out, put a gun to his head, and our officer shot the man through the door.
Officer Hernandez fired 1 shot through the door and several more after getting out. The suspect, 32-year-old Agapito Rodriguez of Killeen, Texas, was pronounced dead at the scene. Rodriguez's wife, Sarah, and 2 children were not injured. Police also questioned the man Rodriguez allegedly attempted to rob. He says when all he could produce was $2, Rodriguez gave it back to him and drove off. A police spokesman tells me tonight that the preliminary investigation indicates the shooting was justified, but the case will be turned over to internal affairs and a Dallas County grand jury. And as part of standard operating procedure, Officer Hernandez has been placed on administrative leave. Live in the newsroom, Lena Lewis, Fox 4 News.
Hopes were high a peace deal would be made today with the Serbs, but at this hour, the deal is off.
NATO and Yugoslav military leaders have failed to reach agreement on troop withdrawals from Kosovo. As a result, NATO says it will intensify airstrikes against the Serbs. And the Allies are wasting no time. In the span of half an hour tonight, NATO jets fired 30 missiles at targets in western Kosovo. That's not too far away from the Macedonian airport where the latest round of peace talks were being held. The talks ended when the Yugoslav delegates refused to guarantee the full withdrawal of all their troops. They also could not promise the safe return of ethnic Albanian refugees.
NATO continues to release stunning video of some of its successful airstrikes. This video from the nose cam of a NATO jet shows a missile hitting a tank. It was one of 14 Serb military targets NATO hit yesterday. Allied jets are flying many of their missions in and around Kosovo, especially near the Albanian border. Martin Savidge reports from the heart of the action.
NATO Sunday unleashed one of its most formidable weapons on the embattled area of the northern Albanian border crossing of Merini. B-52 bombers from miles overhead sent a devastating rain of bombs falling on the area of Gorashov, just inside the Yugoslav province of Kosovo. The thunderous explosions pounded the air throughout the mountain valley. The force of the blast could be felt kilometers away. The mountain plateau had been the scene of a day-long artillery and mortar duel between Serb forces and members of the Kosovo Liberation Army. If NATO's show of force was meant to silence the 2 warring sides, it failed. Minutes later, the same hills were echoing with fierce exchanges of gunfire and artillery. Far from bringing relief to Kosovo refugees and the people of northern Albania, the NATO peace outline has brought a new wave of violence. Just the night before, residents cowered in bunkers as Serb guns opened up on Kruma and 2 other Albanian towns northeast of Kukës along the border. 1 woman was killed and 3 children were injured. Now authorities are evacuating Kosovo refugees that had used the area for shelter. Shells were the only things crossing the Albanian border Sunday. So were more men, said to have been just released from Serb captivity. Like those who came the day before, they said the Serbs beat them as they pushed them out of Kosovo. Several of the men had bloodied mouths, the result, they said, of Serb fists. They claim to have seen no indications of Serb troops preparing to leave. There are no signs of withdrawing, he says. They are only going from one place to another. KLA soldiers in Kosovo report seeing Yugoslav army troops and police taking part in a looting spree. Officials take that as a sign that Serb forces know they are leaving. Serb police and soldiers have started to go into each house, and they are robbing everything. Appliances, refrigerators, TVs, VCRs, and they put them in a truck and leave. KLA officials also say the new heavy fighting is another indication of an impending pullout, with the Serbs delivering one last final round of attacks. In the refugee camps in Kukis, the UN has posted copies of the Kosovo peace plan for people to read. Few take notice, in part because it is written in English, but also because many continue to doubt it will work. With more refugees arriving with stories of abuse by the Serbs, and with more bombs and mortars landing on the border, in northern Albania, the only signs of peace are the words printed on a piece of paper. Martin Savidge, Marini, Albania.
Meantime, another U.S. embassy comes under fire from anti-NATO demonstrators. Protesters in the Czech Republic shouted, "Murderers!" and they threw bottles at the embassy building in Prague. Witnesses say some of the protesters started breaking windows and attacking the riot police lined up outside the embassy. The police responded by beating some of the protesters and arresting others. No one, however, was seriously injured.
The court reporter in the Darlie Routier trial has lost her certification. Sandra Halsey's certification was revoked by a state board after her transcripts were ruled flawed and had to be reconstructed by another court reporter. Those transcripts are the basis for Routier's appeal for a new trial. The Texas Court of Criminal Appeals must decide whether the new transcripts can be used. Routier is on death row for the 1996 murder of her son. Her other son was also killed. Funeral services took place today for the American Airlines pilot killed in last Tuesday's crash in Little Rock. 48-year-old Richard Bushman was one of 9 people who died when Flight 1420 went down in a severe storm. The wreckage has been moved, and investigators want to look at the computers on the plane. That could help them find out if the spoilers, reverse thrusters, and braking systems were working properly, and that would determine what actually caused the crash. An accident like the crash of Flight 1420 really puts emergency crews to the test.
Response time is critical, and that's why the Federal Aviation Administration wants to make sure every airport is ready for the worst. DFW Airport held a life-saving drill this morning, and Fox 4's Shonda Lee was there.
Please advise when Global 1999 is next to land.
It's just after 7 a.m. and a Global Airlines jet has crashed at DFW Airport.
The Simulator Alert 2 has been upgraded.
Fire crews rush to the scene as they see the jet full of flames. Passengers are strewn all over the runway, badly hurt and bleeding. EMTs quickly examine the victims to see whose injuries are most severe, while other crew members set up a triage area so the victims can start receiving treatment.
We got a 2 coming? Okay. I want you to make sure that if you go back out here, I want you to know that you may die.
This disaster response is only a drill, but it helps prepare DFW employees for the real thing.
We'd certainly rather make a mistake out here than we would in the real situation.
Airport administrators say the drill had nothing to do with last week's deadly American Airlines crash in Little Rock, Arkansas. It just required FAA training, and FAA employees were on hand to evaluate the crew's performance.
But I expect that they will be able to tell us that we've got some issues that probably need to be resolved. And from that regard, that is a success, because the whole purpose of this operation from our position is to be able to find those shortcomings that we may have and be able to address them before the real thing happens.
DFW airport employees train for this type of disaster every year, but they say no matter how hard they train, it can never prepare them for the real thing.
I don't think you can possibly do enough of anything to prepare for the real thing, you know, because not every one of them is going to be the same.
It's been 11 years since the last major disaster at DFW Airport, when Delta Flight 1141 crashed after takeoff, killing 13 people. But 94 people survived. DFW crews were quick to respond then, and because of drills like these, they'll be ready should anything happen in the future. Shonda, Fox 4 News.
Emergency crews were called into action today at London's Heathrow Airport, but it was no drill. A supersonic Concorde jet coming from New York had to make an emergency landing. The Concordes are the fastest civilian jets in the world. This is video of one on display in New York. The pilot of the troubled jet reported hydraulic problems, which could have affected the jet's steering. Fortunately, the jet was able to land safely, and none of its 97 passengers was injured.
Landing gears down and locked.
The Space Shuttle Discovery's back home tonight after a rare but perfect nighttime landing early this morning. The shuttle touched down around 1 this morning at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Discovery's crew spent 10 days in orbit loading supplies into the new International Space Station and also doing some maintenance work. The next shuttle mission is scheduled for July, but it might have to be delayed. Columbia is supposed to carry an X-ray telescope into orbit, but the motor for that telescope may not be ready by then. Happy birthday tonight to Fort Worth. The city is 150 years old.
And there is a very big birthday bash going on right now in the city's downtown. Fox 4's Saul Garza joins us live from the party with the latest. Hi, Saul.
Hi, Richard and Erika. Well, the Temptations on stage right now. They've been entertaining the crowd here for about 30 minutes, but I tell you, thousands of people are out here taking in the sights and sounds of this giant birthday celebration. And you know, it all started with a fort on this day back in 1849, not far from where we're standing.
It was just a small outpost, about 15 to 20 men.
It was Major Ripley Arnold who led the Army's 2nd Armory Cavalry Regiment to a location on the Trinity River to establish the fort.
They were given orders by Washington to set up a series of outposts, which kind of, the western tip was along the Fort Worth boundary. So they ended up setting up the first camps here.
It was named Fort Worth in honor of their general, William Jenkins Worth. Tom Saunders is a 5th-generation cowboy.
My granddad moved up to Fort Worth in 1902, and he was the first cattle dealer on the Fort Worth stockyards. And we operated there for 75 years. So we've been in the cattle, but that's all we know.
And this girl, you can see the stitching in her jeans.
Della Sandifer has made Fort Worth her home for 60 years. She's an artist who captures the flavor of the city in her paintings.
I don't think we've ever lost that country touch, and that's something Dallas doesn't have.
Happy 150th, Fort Worth! But things have changed over the years.
Well, these are good times in Fort Worth, and that's part of what we're trying to celebrate. This is a community with a rich heritage, very diverse heritage, and these are good times, and we're moving in the right direction.
Again, the legendary Temptations entertaining thousands of people out here in downtown Fort Worth. Now, you still have time to take in the festivities. We are located at the Tandy Center subway parking lot off of Henderson and Belknap. At 9:45, they'll be having a laser light show along with a fireworks display. So come on out and wish Fort Worth a happy birthday. Reporting live in Fort Worth, Saul Garza, Fox 4 News.
Thanks, Saul. And the Temptations still looking good. The Stanley Cup officially in Dallas now. The Stars haven't won it yet, but the prestigious Cup is visiting North Dallas for a couple of days. In fact, the NHL had to wait to see whether the Stars or the Avalanche won Friday's championship game to see where the Cup would go on display. You can check out the Stanley Cup at the Dallas Museum of Art Monday through Wednesday from 9 in the morning to 7 at night. And for more information, you can call the museum at 214-922-1200.
Still ahead, disaster at an air show. A spectator is among those killed. We're going to take an in-depth look at the changing face of marriage and divorce. What we found may shock you. Also had the menu at this restaurant may more than shock you. The worms are the main course.
I'm meteorologist Ron Jackson. Our Fox 4 weather trackers were nice enough to call in this evening. These were the afternoon highs that they reported. Indicator Don Niblett came in with 87 degrees this afternoon. Bobby Morton with 92. Charles Robinson in the beautiful town of Gun Barrel City came in with 91 degrees this afternoon. Well, we are watching some very heavy thunderstorms west of the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We'll talk more about that and have that 5-day outlook coming up in just a few minutes.
I'm Max Morgan. Coming up in sports, the Stars get their chance to shine in a big way against Buffalo beginning Tuesday in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And in baseball, the Rangers try to continue their winning ways in Phoenix. Those stories and more later in sports.
On the next Seinfeld.
The wedding is delayed until June! It's like a stay of execution!
Dead man walking.
Monday on Fox 4.
Fox Monday. See the wildest, messiest, most embarrassing celebrations ever caught on tape. World's funniest party disasters, too. Them.
What are you, nearsighted?
It's the summer's most revealing case.
They might look the same, but they don't feel the same.
Ally McBeal.
Monday, starting at 7 on Fox 4.
Love doesn't come in a box. It's not about how much you spend. Maxine and I, we feel the same way. And so, I take her to PetSmart. Liz balanced her diet, recommended the right brush for her coat. You know, simple things. An unusual collar, all at the usual great price. You see, PetSmart's not about money. It's about love. And that's how we are.
Do you believe in sea monsters? You will. The new steel eel at SeaWorld. The eel-electrifying 15-story drop. More out of your seat airtime than any other Texas coaster. Wild curves, camelbacks, and teeth-clenching speeds that will make you believe. It's Texas' only hypercoaster, the Steel Eel, a new species of coaster, only at SeaWorld.
At American Tourister, we've always subjected our luggage to some pretty harsh treatment. So we took it to Islands of Adventure at Universal Studios Escape in Orlando, where it met Rex. American Tourister. Tough luggage for a tough world.
You're watching Fox 4, the news station, with Richard Ray, Erika Ruiz, Ron Jackson, and Max Morgan.
Welcome back. Residents in Oglala, South Dakota are cleaning up now from a weekend of violent weather. Witnesses say several tornadoes plowed through an area around the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. Dozens of mobile homes were destroyed and one person was killed. Rescuers lined up shoulder to shoulder to search through the debris. Many of the reservation's families lost everything they own.
I'm really lucky. I mean, the house and stuff, you know, doesn't really matter because you can always replace that. But, you know, I'm just happy me and my husband and my kids got out alive and that we're all okay.
The governor of South Dakota visited the reservation on Saturday and he promised emergency assistance.
Twisters also tore through an area of Florida overnight. In Pinellas County, the storms blew down signs, trees, and roofs, including the top of this nursing home, forcing 28 elderly patients to be evacuated.
I noticed the hail and the wind picked up and the lightning got really bad.
A lot of water damage. You got pretty deep water inside.
Just watching this tree twist over and fall down.
Dozens of homes and businesses were damaged. Cleanup is expected to take a couple of weeks. Fire continues to rage at Cibola National Forest in New Mexico. Thousands of acres have been burned so far. 200 firefighters are working the fire using air tankers, helicopters, and ground equipment. There were no official evacuations this weekend, but many people living nearby decided to get out anyway for the time being.
A driver in a California off-road race lost control of his car and plowed into a crowd of spectators. One person was killed, 8 others were injured. The accident happened yesterday during the Baja 500 race. That's a desert off-road race that runs along the Baja Peninsula. It's not clear what caused the driver to lose control of his car. Spectators and race volunteers helped stabilize the injured until emergency crews arrived to help. A deadly plane crash in Slovakia tops our look at news from around the world. Dozens of people watched in horror as the British stunt plane plowed into the ground during an air show. The plane burst into flames, killing the pilot and one spectator. 4 others in the audience were injured. The Slovak International Air Day is an annual event that showcases aircraft from around the world. An hour after the deadly crash, the show continued. Former President Jimmy Carter's in Indonesia tonight for that country's first open election in 44 years. Mr. Carter is one of many foreign election observers who will watch the voting on Monday. The vast majority of Indonesians have never voted in a truly free election. The election will determine seats in Parliament, and those elected will help choose a new president in November.
And some people will pay big bucks for big bugs, not to study, but to eat. A restaurant in Taiwan is dishing up such delicacies as pan-fried tree worms, locusts, and crickets. Some of them are served as side dishes, others are the main course. The chef says he prefers frying the bugs over boiling them. He says it makes the meal a little less revolting. Up next, they're a favorite to get rid of those pesky bugs, if you don't want to eat them. But bug zappers may actually be dangerous for you. And why you need to give yourself a shot of skepticism when you read health and medical information on the internet.
It's Belfour versus Hashing, Stars versus Sabres. We'll preview the Stanley Cup Final. So join us for Sports Sunday tonight at 10 on Fox 4.
On the next Seinfeld.
The wedding is delayed until June! It's like a stay of execution!
Dead man walking.
Monday on Fox 4.
Months of blood and sweat has reached its pinnacle. The Stanley Cup Finals. Sabres, Stars, eyes on the prize. Game 1.
Tuesday, starting at 7 on Fox 4.
Need an escape? Come to Sonic. Remember how Grandma used to spend all day making you pie?
Do I?
Then you've got to try our coconut cream and banana cream pie shakes. Handmade thick with the great taste of coconut, fresh filled bananas, and sweet bits of graham cracker crust. So good you'll think Grandma herself made them just for you. Tastes just like Granny's, except ours fits in a cup holder.
Sonic America's, Sonic America's.
Speaking of escapes, try our toaster sandwiches before they're all gone.
Life is much more challenging when you're deaf. It's hard to ask questions when signing is your way of communicating. I'm lucky to at least have partial hearing and the ability to sign. And the best thing about being able to sign is being able to make someone's day a little bit easier.
First, there was Chevy Suburban. Then came Lincoln, Lexus, Mercedes, and the others. And in the end, the one that started it all is still the one that tows the most, holds the most, and does the most. Chevy Suburban, like a rock.
You're watching Fox 4 News, the news station.
Welcome back. You've seen them, you've probably even used them, but those bug zappers could be dangerous for you.
Scientists now say that disease could be spread when those bugs are zapped. Fox reporter Kris Osborn has that story.
Zap. The bug is electrocuted, gone, pestering and bugging you no longer, right? Well, not so fast. A team of scientists at Kansas State University found that when you're zapping insects at barbecues this summer, it may be the bugs who have the last laugh.
Many people thought in the past that because you're killing the insect with high voltage, up to 4,000 volts, the particles or the pathogens will be killed. We have found otherwise know that they're surviving, that they are made airborne, and we can pick them up several feet away from the trap.
So when a bug is zapped by one of these, the scientists say particles are released into the air, which creates the risk that someone nearby could ingest or inhale bacteria carried by the bug.
Common houseflies have been demonstrated to carry millions of bacteria at any given time. And depends where they have been. They have been in manure, and there's some E. coli or some cholera, you name it. They could pick up anything. The bug zapper dismember the flies when they explode, and you can end up with a chunk of the insect. I mean a chunk like a leg, or the head, or the wings landing on your salad.
A contaminated bug wing in your salad. Not exactly appetizing, and a potential health risk. But some aren't rattled by the news.
Well, you can see it can't do anything to me. My picnic table is over there.
The scientists say adhesives are safer, even if that method isn't quite as satisfying as watching the electrocution of your summertime foes. In New York, Kris Osborn, Fox News.
Just ahead, what makes a marriage work? Some couples take some very controversial steps to stay together. Plus, a Lone Star adventure for kids this summer. It may be just what some parents are looking for. So stay with us.
Have a news tip? Call Fox 4 News in Dallas, 214-720-3155.
We've been making Earth Grains bread for so long with so much goodness in every loaf, we never really thought we could ever top it. Until we did. With Harvest Top breads from Earth Grains. Wholesome good taste with whole grain goodness from bottom to top. Harvest Top. I guess you could say we even topped ourselves. Earth Grains. Now we've topped ourselves again with new Harvest Top Golden Pecan.
The word is about, there's something evolving. Whatever may come, the world keeps revolving. They say the next big thing is here, that the revolution's near. But to me it seems quite clear that it's all just a little bit of history repeating.
General's daughter.
Why was she murdered?
On June 18th, Paramount Pictures presents the most anticipated thriller of the summer.
Profit, revenge, jealousy, or plain old homicidal mania.
From the producer of Clear and Present Danger and the director of Con Air, John Travolta.
This is my investigation. You better start thinking about your career. You better start thinking about yours.
The General's Daughter, rated R. Starts Friday, June 18th.
What I like about the jalapenos on the Whataburger is that gives that extra little tang taste.
They add the right seasoning to my Whataburger.
Just enough juices flowing with lettuce,
meat with the cheese,
onions and pickles,
slightly toasted bread,
bacon,
and the bacon. Anything you want in it, and they make it especially for you.
I'm really hungry now, starving now for one.
If my mother would come visit me from Holland, I would definitely take her to Whataburger.
Whataburger, real food, real fresh for real folks since 1950.
You're watching Fox 4 News, the news station.
Welcome back. Federal agents busted a boat loaded with drugs in the Gulf of Mexico and headed for Texas. The Coast Guard, with the help of the FBI and the Drug Enforcement Agency, stopped the ship coming from Panama. It's called the China Breeze. Inside, they found more than 4 tons of cocaine. Agents escorted the boat to the port of Galveston. No word yet on how many people have been arrested or the street value of those drugs.
A very unusual murder trial continues tomorrow in Phoenix. The defendant doesn't deny killing his wife, but he claims he's not responsible because he was sleepwalking at the time. Scott Fallater is accused of stabbing his wife 44 times and then holding her head underwater in their swimming pool. Family members say Fallater had a history of sleepwalking, and some sleep experts testified Friday that sleepwalkers can become violent if disturbed. But prosecutors insist that's nonsense, that his actions were conscious, calculated, and cold-blooded. 85% of people get married at some time, but a recent study shows the number of weddings has fallen by 20% in the past 10 years.
And yet divorce is once again on the rise. Why? It's a question Fox reporter Molly Morris tries to answer.
Marriage and fairy tales. In the beginning, they're one and the same.
I, Michael, choose you, Karen.
I, Karen, choose you, Michael.
But fairy tales almost always end happily ever after, while marriages...
And I was married the first time for 7 years and the last time for 4 years, and I've been divorced now for 3 years.
I knew
a year into the marriage that this was not going to work?
I was married for 25 years, and I've been divorced for 2 months.
I just knew that last year we were together that he was not my friend.
The reasons are many, but the outcome is the same. Couples walking down the aisle, only to end up here in divorce court. Statistics show 2 out of 5 marriages now end in divorce. One could argue that's hardly a success rate. So what is the answer? Maybe instead we should be asking questions. Is marriage impossible? And if so, what are the alternatives?
Our marriage is what I call an open marriage, and we've been married about 11 and a half years almost. By that I mean that the way we work it is it's okay for either of us to get romantically involved with somebody else, as long as A, they're honest about it, and B, our relationship stays their first priority.
For Kris and Jan Spoor, the alternative is openness.
The person he's in love with right now is somebody who's a very good friend of mine, and somebody I'm very close to. And so I just think it's neat. It makes him happier. It makes our relationship work better.
On the surface, it looks like a license for infidelity. But Jan and Kris claim it's not simply about sex.
Just getting involved with somebody so as to have another sexual partner would seem a little shallow to me. You know, what I'm really interested in, as Kris said, is other people that I can share a real emotional commitment with.
And the opportunity to share those commitments is what the Spoors say conventional marriages do not allow, and why for them this non-monogamous notion works. But even having your cake and eating it too has its moments.
If I meet somebody that I think is really cool and exciting, whether they're a friend or you know, I'd like them to be something more, you know, I go bouncing around and, you know, talk to Kris about it. Wow, this person, they're really neat, you know, so and so forth.
And that doesn't bother you? Oh, sometimes it does, and then I'll say, oh, give it a rest, tone it down. I don't want to, you know, I get the picture. It depends on kind of what sort of mood I'm in.
These two have got to be the exception, right? Wrong.
Are we starting our membership period, our dues paying period?
This is a board meeting of the Chesapeake Polyamory Network, a confidential support group for those who want to love more.
There are those of us who believe that just like we can love 2 children and love them equally, we can love 2 spouses, 2 partners, more than that, that love is unlimited.
CPN formed just last year and is a well-thought-out group complete with purpose and objectives and a code of ethics.
We're not a swingers organization. We're not about introducing people to each other so they can have casual sexual relationships.
But part of CPN's agenda is scheduling permissive events where sexual activity is expected to take place.
We're very sex positive. We believe that sexuality is a normal and healthy part of the human condition, human